Well, it's Tuesday, and that means it's time for another sports Q&A here on the Schleg Daddy TV channel. Make sure you check out the description box for the information on how to submit your questions to me to answer in one of these Q&A episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday on this channel. Some of you may be wondering who the heck this is. Some of you that watch OTRS Central, the wrestling channel that I do here on YouTube, know that this is Summer. She won't leave me alone, so I guess she just wants to be in this Q&A for now. So, yeah. But let's get started here. Let me lean forward, Summer, really quickly, and let's get to these fine people's questions. At CStaff95 asked, thoughts on the Toronto Raptors? Do you think they're an entertaining team to watch, and will they make the playoffs this year? I will say on the Toronto Raptors, they're kind of one of those teams that flies under the radar a little bit, maybe in large part because of the fact that they play in Toronto. Um, are they an entertaining team to watch? Well, I guess entertaining is relatively relative when you're talking about Eastern Conference basketball. But I do like DeMar DeRozan quite a bit. I was a fan of his when he was coming out of USC, and he's one of my favorite players to watch personally. And do I think they'll make the playoffs this upcoming season? Oh, absolutely. I mean, they made it last year, so I don't see where they got any worse to where they wouldn't all of a sudden. I would fully expect them to make the playoffs come next season. What do you think? She doesn't care. At Madden God 45, can you rank the top five wide receivers in the National Football League? Top five wide receivers in the National Football League, assuming everybody is healthy, in no particular order here, just trying to get through the top five, the creme de la creme of wide receivers in the NFL. You're probably looking at Megatron Calvin Johnson, Brandon Marshall, A.J. Green, Julio Jones. And then that fifth one's kind of up for grabs for me just a little bit. Um, I'm trying to think here, and maybe I should have looked at this and paid a little more attention to it beforehand, so that way I could answer it more effectively for you. But those would be like the four that stand out to me the most above the rest. Maybe for the fifth one, you could throw guys in there like Demaryius Thomas. Perhaps you could. But I think there's probably four that really stand up above the rest. Some of you might throw in, what about Alshon Jeffrey? I'm not ready to throw him into that category just yet. Some other people might say somebody like a Vincent Jackson. A lot of different names you could throw in there, but I think Megatron, Brandon Marshall, Julio Jones, AJ Green are four that really stand out to me a cut above the rest. At Nart Sokar 25, even with Deshaun Jackson gone, do you see Foles having as good of a season compared to last year, and how far do you think they go? First thing, just thought came to my mind, Madden God 45. The other wide receiver I'd probably throw in that top five category if I had to would be Dez Bryant. As far as Deshaun Jackson, do I see Nick Foles having as good of a season as last year? No, and that's more so because of the statistical anomaly that was his season last year. But do I think Foles is the real deal? Yes. Do I think Foles is going to have a really good season this upcoming year? Yes. How far do I think the Eagles can go at this point based off of the way they're constructed? Maybe the divisional round of the playoffs, perhaps a surprise appearance in the NFC Championship game, depending on how things would play out. At Jordan Higgins asked if you could bring back three great post players from the past to re-energize post play in the NBA, who would they be and why? First name I would go with would be Hakeem Olajuwon. You're talking about the dream. You're talking about an all-around player, if there was ever an all-around player in terms of low post players, in particular centers. But that would be one that would easily rank at the top of my list of if I brought him into today's NBA, he would make Dwight Howard cry. He would average over 30 points a game. Hakeem Olajuwon would clearly be the best player in the league right now, bar none, period. Next player I would probably throw in there would be Wilt Chamberlain. Just his sheer dominance during his time. Obviously, a tremendous post player for so many years. He would, as a result, force other teams to prioritize it. Other kids would grow up wanting to maybe be like Wilt the Still, and I think that would help to re-energize post play a little bit. And maybe the third one I would go with is, I mean, you could go Ewing, you could go Abdul Jabbar, you could go um, David Robinson, you could go Bill Russell. I mean, there's a lot of great post players that you could go to. Um, If I had to go for a third one, maybe a Kevin McHale. And the reason I would maybe say a Kevin McHale over like an Moses Malone or an Elvin Hayes or a Karl Malone is because when I talk about McHale, you're talking about a guy whose offensive skill was outstanding and the array of low post moves that he had were dynamic. And I think he would fuck shit up if he was in the league today. At Alex Shirley 10, do you think the LA Clippers are the most overrated team in the NBA right now? Overrated they are. Most overrated? Maybe. I think a lot of Houston Rockets fans, as I found out, incredibly overrate the Houston Rockets and that organization. But I think from a national standpoint, the most overrated team, you could make a strong argument for the LA Clippers, especially when you look at their potential sale price of $2 billion. Jesus Christ. They're the second team in the second biggest city in the country, and they don't even have their own venue. And yet somebody wants to buy them, Steve Ballmer, for $2 billion. Good Christ. At Chris is nice. If Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter stayed in Toronto, would they have won a title? No. No. I don't think Vince Carter or Tracy McGrady ever truly had that alpha male type of personality, in the sense that an alpha male type of personality that could will a team to victory when it needed to, when it mattered most. I don't have any sausages in my hand. Stop it, dog. So no, I think they would have been one of those teams that maybe at some point in time would have reached an NBA Finals, arguably, but would have had a long sustained run of making the playoffs. But I don't see either one of those two guys being the number one guy for a championship team. At Danye Todd 18, hope the military is going well for you, my man. The Bulls just signed Aaron Brooks. Do you think they're the deepest team in the NBA? You could definitely make an argument in terms of numbers and in terms of quality of those numbers that the Bulls are the deepest team in the NBA. See, this is why, Danye, you didn't want any part of Carmelo Anthony. I tried to tell you. Now look at the roster that the Chicago Bulls have assembled ahead of the 2014-2015 season. Hopefully you understand, my brother, what I was talking about now. And at MC_Big Bird asks the last question for this Q&A. Your underrated quarterbacks of the 90s. Underrated quarterbacks of the 90s. Randall Cunningham. Definitely Randall Cunningham. I mean, older fans, I think, know about it, but the younger generation maybe doesn't know so much about him, and that's a shame. Drew Bledsoe, I think, is somebody that's definitely fits into the underrated category in terms of as a quarterback. Another one might be a guy like a Trent Green, but you could maybe argue would have more of his success in the early 2000s. Yeah, I'd probably say more early 2000s with him. But I think he's definitely somebody that fits in the list in reference of Drew Bledsoe, though, because you're talking about a guy that, was the new coming of Dan Marino, and this guy was, he had his moments where he was freaking incredible. So those would be a couple of them that stand out to me. I'm trying to think of anybody else. What do you think? Any other quarterbacks of the 90s? You don't really care, do you? That's just the way it is. I think some even Hall of Fame quarterbacks from the 90s don't get the credit they deserve for just how good they were. Namely, a guy that comes to mind is Warren Moon. I mean, here was a guy, a prolific passer that made the run and shoot work for so many years in Houston. And I just don't think he gets the credit that he so rightly deserves, frankly. That's just the way I look at it. Even Troy Aikman, it wasn't the greatest statistically, but man, he was a money quarterback and knew how to win, and his teams won a lot with him at the helm. So there obviously had to be something to it. So again, make sure you check out the description box for information on how to take part in future Q&A episodes that, again, happen every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday here on the Schleg Daddy TV channel. Sorry for the interruption from the damn dog, but any of you that have animals or kids know how persistent they can be at times, and eventually you just end up caving. That's just the way it is. Did you have fun? You're too busy looking out the window, probably looking for male doggies. All right, so make sure you check out some of the other great content here on the Schleg Daddy TV channel. Lots of great videos to come throughout the rest of the month of July, and tune in again Thursday for another Q&A episode here on this very channel.